Hey, this is John Smith with WireData.net, and I just finished a post on how to monitor for data leakage on SQL Server, and I want to talk real quickly on how to use Extrahop and triggers to be able to monitor your SQL servers and any kind of database server so that you can make sure that people aren't stealing your data or logging in. First thing I'll show you is I'm at the console. If you want to see database monitoring from the Extrahop console, Dan Greer actually has a better video than I could do on Extrahop and how to monitor databases with Extrahop from the console. Today I'm going to talk specifically about from an InfoSec angle and also on how to use the trigger feature with it to send data to a syslog server, as you can see in this case Splunk. The first thing I want to show you is the actual trigger itself. So let's take a look at those. And again, you can do everything. This is a evaluation version, but everything I'm going to show you will actually work with the Discovery Edition. So here are two triggers. We have DB request build flow, and this is a very simple trigger. And I'm looking for the DB request event. And if you look at the editor here, I'm just tapping an existing flow and I'm creating an argument or a variable that I can use to kind of cherry pick metrics from. So I'm going to build the flow here. And generally I assign this to my database servers so that you don't have to assign it to every single client. You can assign it to just the database servers. And then the next one I want to show you is the actual report flow. So here's where I actually build out the metrics. And if you look, I just want to show you real quickly what I'm logging. So I'm logging, I'm sending a remote syslog, which is predefined in the configuration. And here I am, if you see EH event there, and I'm naming the EH event, EH DB trigger, and you'll see that in Splunk. I'm grabbing the user. For this example, I won't get the user ID because of how I'm logging in, but in a lot of cases you will get the user ID. I'm getting the method, such as update, select, drop, that kind of thing. Here's where I'm getting the actual statement, and you see where I've predefined that and instantiated that variable there within the JSON. I'm also getting the client IP and server IP, and in addition to that I'm getting the important metric here, the T process. I won't talk too much about that today. This isn't a performance, this is more of an InfoSec video, but if you are interested in looking at metrics, I will talk to that a little bit in terms of how to use the syslog feature with Extrahop. So I'm sending all of my data to all of the triggers that meet the specific criteria. In this scenario, I'm looking at basically all of them. If you're looking for poor performing queries, you could set this to something like if the T process is greater than 1,000 or more than a second, which would be syslogging every SQL transaction that took longer than a full second to complete. For this and for this lab, I want to look at everything for the purposes of digital evidence and security. So let's take a look at a few things here. Within Splunk, the first thing I want to show you is I'm able to actually get the table performance, but there's a couple of other things I can get. So here I have the average process time, and this is the actual table. Now I'm using a regular expression to get the table, to parse the table out, and as you can see I get some funky data here. As you learn your databases, or as you look at the raw data here, you'll get an idea of how to parse the table for those tables that are important to you. But if I'm a security person, or if I'm a security conscious DBA or a security conscious sysadmin, what I look for is just the general which tables are being accessed. And here this is actually a performance query, but here I'm getting the actual tables and the performance in milliseconds of those tables. If you do notice a table that's taking several hundred milliseconds longer than the rest of the tables, or if you have a SQL cluster where it's on a server IP, let's say I wanted to get the server IP. If you notice that a table was slower on one server IP than on another server IP, then you might need to index that table if you're in an Oracle cluster or something like that. Extrahop supports all of the big databases. They support MySQL, SQL Server from Microsoft, they support DB2, and they definitely support Oracle. So you can do any of these database triggers on any of the big four platforms. So here again we see the table performance by SQL Server, and as you can see here with credit card data, we see this particular 53 is performing very well, and then the other two aren't performing quite as well. These are actually, this is a VIP on a NetScaler. I'm testing the data streaming function of a NetScaler, so that's part of that test there. So this is a look at the tables. The things I look for is also, you should know which tables have critical data, like in this case, credit card data. This is a fictitious table. I really don't have a table called credit card data. I just ran some queries so I could generate some information. But you can look at the client, you can look at the server, and what you want to look at it, or what you want to ask yourself from an InfoSec perspective is this an appropriate client to be querying this table? And what I mean by that is you may have a client-server application, you may have a tiered application that leverages web services that grab data from the back end. Is this part of my web farm, or is this client IP a workstation that someone's got SQL tools on and they're trying to make ad hoc access to my back-end database server? Other things you want to look at is if you see a really short process time and then you see a high instance of really long process times, do you have a trusted system that's been compromised? The important thing here to look at is that you need to be able to see those systems that are just behaving differently than the others. It could be an issue of someone's running queries they're not supposed to, or it could be an issue that you need to do some indexing. You may have some IOPS related problems that are common with SQL servers, but basically something should stick out for you. So from a performance standpoint, you look for slow SQL servers. From an InfoSec standpoint, I look at it and I say, hey, why does this client take 21 milliseconds and the rest of them are a little bit slower? What data is this client grabbing? My next query, and this is the average process time. This is more of a performance query, but this is the average process time by client IP and by server IP, and this is the same thing. So here we have the clients, here we have the server, and this is the average query turn time. And if you notice, we have one metric that's sticking out right here. This one's taking 16.7 milliseconds versus the rest of them taking basically less, 2 milliseconds or less. So this is something that you would look at and say, what is the nature of that data? Now this is a different IP address, so I'm not quite as worried, but if it was the same IP address and one particular client seemed to be taking longer, and this isn't like the flow tick where the round trip time might be different. This is the T process, and the process time here is basically the amount of time that the client waits to hear back from the server. So this is the time that the server is churning and trying to work with the statement, the SQL statement, and then send the data back. So what is .98 doing to 205 that's making its statements take so much longer? The third one I want to look at, again, what I'm looking for here is we again look at the average process time. This is the speed. This is a stored procedure. So from a performance standpoint, you can actually, and I've done this at my previous employer, I was able to actually we were a multi-tenant provider, and I was actually able to get the average performance of all of my canned stored procedures across multi-tenancy. So if we got complaints from one customer and I noticed that there was a slow stored procedure, I could go look at the performance of the stored procedure of the same stored procedure on the rest of my customers. And that was really valuable to us to be able to see an anomaly. Here I'm basically just looking at the client, the server, what exactly was executed, and the amount of time it took. The other thing, another valuable statistic to look at here, if you wanted to, is you could actually look at the number of occurrences. So you could actually do a count and so I'm going to count the number of times a particular statement was run. And this could be important if it's a drop or something along those lines. So here I'm looking at a couple. Again, not everything has a statement, so some of them are just regular normal tasks like update, things like that. Those don't always end up in the statement. Those are methods. But here you can see the number of times a particular statement was run. Most of these are different stored or canned actions from a client server. I'm running Zen Desktop 7. So you're seeing the number of times a particular statement ran, who ran it, and against which server. Now if I wanted to see something like drop, I could look here. And this is fictitious data, but if I'm curious to see if anybody tried to drop a table, I'm able to go in here, type that in, that parses it out, and if you notice, this is the SQL statement that came through where someone tried to actually drop a table. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and show you in real time how it works, and at least show you how quickly. I had that paused. So here I'm looking for a particular IP because I'm seeing a lot of SQL data because of the Zen Desktop deployment. But if I come to my Query Analyzer tool, what you'll see here is I'm going to try to select, essentially I'm going to try to steal some credit card data, right? I'm a hacker. I've either compromised a web server or part of your middleware has been compromised and it is a trusted server that has access to your back-end system. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here and I'm going to try to steal this credit card data. So I'm going to just run this query a couple of times. And so what happens is this data comes across the wire, it tries to connect to that server, and we'll wait for Splunk to update. But basically, if someone tries to do something, and there you see it, that was far less than, that was about 10 seconds, maybe less. So when someone runs a query, or if someone's doing something malicious, you can actually see it coming through on the wire in real time. Let's say we suspect .98 of being up to no good. I can come in here and look at everything that this IP address has done for the last 24 hours. And obviously I see a number of times that this user has been trying to select credit card data right here. The rest of them look pretty harmless. But basically, I'm able to go in here real quickly and see what exactly this user's been doing. And this will also give you an idea of if you think you're breached, for one, you'll see what exactly they got away with. And two, if you're looking for digital evidence, the log itself is intact. So you can collect all of this and submit it to a prosecution as digital evidence because we do send the entire log. But more importantly, you can send security to this person's desk with a cardboard box and have them escorted out of the building. But basically what I want to make sure that we drive home here is that even though we have malware protection, even though we take steps to block packets, even though we update our antivirus, a trusted employee could engage in malfeasance, or you could have a trusted system that is allowed to talk to the backend database that could get compromised. And having an understanding of what their day-to-day database profile and query profile looks like is going to be very important to prevent data leakage from SQL Server. And the best way to go about that is to use Extrahop and use the trigger function and send that data to a big data backend platform like Splunk. Again, I did not run SQL Profiler. I didn't install any agents and I didn't change the configuration of any system. I just simply put Extrahop inline on a span and I was able to see everything that was happening with my database. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.